call this meeting of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee to order for Thursday, April 8th, 2021. I'll first do the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting the cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Mr. Sarsfield, would you like to do a roll call, please?
Be my pleasure. For today's meeting of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee, Councillor Campbell.
I'm here.
Councillor Morrow.
Yeah.
Councillor Parker.
Here.
Councillor Higgin. Councillor Higgin. He is muted, but he is there, or he was.
I'm here.
Okay,
Sorry.
good. Thank you. In addition, we have actually physically in the room, we have members of the city clerk staff, and we have, in addition, a couple of the councillors who are watching as they're invited to participate or see what's going on with our committee, plus some other speakers. So we have Councillor Carlson, we have Councillor Kaufman, Councillor Croson, and I believe that's it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And as chairman, I appreciate your help there, Mr. Sarsfield. And thank you to the other members of council who are joining us and participating in the discussion. Feel free to ask questions at any time. But of course, only the four of us are the voting members, but I do encourage conversation and questions from everyone. Moving right along, Mr. Sarsfield, item 2.1 minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Be it resolved that the minutes of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee meeting held on Thursday, March 11th, 2021 be approved, and the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to sign the same. Can I get a mover from the committee?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, I'm guessing it's unanimous. Moving on to item 3.0. First of all, is there any additions to the agenda, Mr. Sarsfield?
There are none.
Thank you very much. Is there any additions from members of the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to adoption of the agenda 3.0. Can I get a motion that the agenda of the community standing safety, the agenda of the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee meeting held on April 8th, 2001 be approved as presented? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving right along here. Item number 4. We have 2 items on the agenda, members of the committee. We have presentations, and we'll go in the order they are presented. 4.1, Mr. Marty Thompson, Manager of Community Social Development, regarding CWSS Phase 2. Welcome, Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, everybody, and I'll let Mr. Dalton kind of introduce us here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marty. Mr. Chair, members of the Standing Committee, I'd just like to offer a couple of introductory comments before Mr. Fox and Mr. Thompson take us through this agenda item today. And I know there have been a number of conversations on the community well-being and safety strategy over the last number of months, and there's certainly been more conversation across the community on the social challenges that we confront, not unlike the challenges confronted by municipalities across the country, but they've been heightened here in Lethbridge for a number of reasons, and most recently by conversations around the federal government's rapid housing initiative. We also know that last fall, as part of or in support of Council's efforts to reopen the budget in response to COVID and the Ipsos survey that was conducted, it was clear again that the #1 concern or priority for residents of the city was community well-being and safety. It had been the #1 priority in earlier iterations of that survey, but it was an even higher percentage of citizens that identified community well-being and safety as their #1 priority at the moment. We also know that a lot of good work's gone on, and that a lot of good work goes on in response to these social challenges across our community right now. There are some very committed, very capable service providers out there, and the city's dedicated some significant time and resources to develop the community well-being and safety strategy and get through the work involved with phase one, and that work was briefed to council last fall and approved. But we're really at a crossroads in terms of how we respond as a community to the social challenges that we face. We know that the current approach is not meeting the needs of our residents that are seeking and need supports, nor is it meeting the needs of our community members as highlighted in that Ipsos survey. And that's despite the good work that goes on across our community. So what Marty's going to present today and what we're recommending to the committee is that we move forward more quickly in implementing phase two of the community well-being and safety strategy, and in particular that we take a collective impact approach, because we know that without getting all of the right folks around the table and the right organizations around the table and taking this community-led collective approach, that we're going to continue to operate as we operate now. We know that the city can't solve these problems on their own. The provincial government can't do it on their own. The federal government can't do it on their own. LPS can't do it on their own. Service providers can't do it on their own. And a number of other partners and stakeholder groups, including private business, citizens, our Indigenous partners and the Indigenous Blackfoot community, philanthropists. None of us can address these issues on our own. And we strongly believe that the way forward is to do this together, to implement this collective impact approach, which is all about arriving at a shared vision, at shared goals and objectives and outcomes, at bringing all of the resources to bear in support of a common approach to addressing these issues. And a key part of this is also accountability. And Marty will also talk about the city's particular role in this, because we play a role, but not the role, and perhaps not even the most important role. But we believe the city clearly has a role to convene, to collaborate, and to advocate, and really to be the backbone organization of this collective impact effort. I'd like to acknowledge Chief Medizadeh, who's here with us this afternoon, and who's been a key partner and support to Marty and the team as they've moved work to this point in time. And I'd also like to mention that we're leaning towards action over conversation. We've heard through the stakeholder engagement, which Marty will talk to, but one of the things we heard was that that there are a number of approaches forward here, paths forward. One is to take time, and it could take months, if not up to a year, to very deliberately plan and move to a collective impact model, to get it 100% correct. And what we're saying to the committee today is we don't think that's where we need to go. We think we need to focus on action, and we think we need to take an agile approach to collective impact, not a pedantic, deliberate approach. And there's nothing wrong with taking a deliberate approach when you have the time, but I've certainly heard from stakeholders, and so have Mike and Marty, heard that folks want to see action. So again, we're talking about being agile here. This isn't going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes as we go down this collective impact journey, if that's where council determines we go, but we'll learn from those, we'll adjust. Again, we're going to be recommending an agile approach, and one that will enable us to put this into action as quickly as possible. So I'll stop there and turn it over to Marty, but I would like to offer Chief Medizadeh the opportunity to comment as one of the key partners, the key entities in this effort here, just to see if he has anything to share at this point.
Thanks, Craig, and hello, everyone. I'm even wearing a tie because I knew Mike would be wearing a tie for sure. So I just wanted to make sure I wear a tie also today. Anyways, I don't have much more to add. Craig has summed it up really good. What I'm looking forward is moving forward with this initiative to make this community safer through a unified approach of dealing with the issues, and also police as a partner, not as a doer, the only component of this. A lot of times when things are fragmented, again, Craig mentioned, a lot of people are doing amazing work. In fact, I was at 3 different locations yesterday, some really good people who are really invested in making this community better. And when you look at all the programs, they're all doing the same thing for the same individuals, but in a fragmented approach. Uh, they do good, but I think if they're unified, it's just going to be that much more, have a much more positive impact to this community. And as Craig said, police is a player in there, certainly a partner at the table. And what we can do from our sphere of influence, certainly to help the city, we're all open to different ideas and how we can better serve the community through whatever action that needs to be done through our services. But at the end, I'm just going to stop there. Just looking forward to moving forward with this. And Greg mentioned about a perfect model. I just went through that with my Comstat model. We were working on it and working on it, and finally I told the gang, I said, you know what, it's as good as it can be for now. Let's just get on with it. And we had our first meeting last month, and we're going to do those monthly meetings to move forward with at least bring a more unified approach from even our operations to serve the citizens in the city. So we are really looking forward to that. In advance, I want to apologize. I have to leave at about 3 o'clock. I have a commission meeting tonight I need to prepare for. So when I leave, there's no disrespect to anyone, just want to go make sure I'm prepared. So my bosses don't beat me up too much tonight.
Thanks a lot, Chief. And thank you for as well, Craig. And I think you summed up really well, Mr. Dalton, when you said these are action items, things that are starting to get implemented, because that was kind of the main conversation around the table at our last meeting. I think the mayor was quite vocal about that as well, because he did participate in that meeting. So, and other members of council really wanted to get some action items, and I'm encouraged from what I hear here, and I'm looking forward to hearing Marty's report. So thank you. Marty, welcome.
Okay, thank you, everybody, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Janessa, if I could get you to load the presentation. And if you could move, and so folks, I recognize many of you have heard the fulsome presentation, but again, because it is a public meeting, I want to make sure all folks have a chance to hear the entire presentation. So the city of Lethbridge has a social policy, and it is a good policy, but we will never be a city free of social issues. That is impossible, but we cannot overlook our social problems, as it can and will cripple a city. And we have seen firsthand the devastating costs relating to social issues. There's the direct human cost of lives lost and families destroyed. There's the financial cost to deliver social programs, the cost for emergency response, such as ambulance and emergency room visits. There's the ongoing healthcare costs, including mental health care. The policing, court, and correctional costs. Our school systems spend tremendous time and effort addressing student issues such as mental health, addiction, poverty, and trauma. And our business community is also heavily impacted. Crime, community safety, and social issues directly impact the bottom line of existing businesses and play a role in whether new businesses want to locate in Lethbridge. The message, community safety and social well-being, is win-win for all of us. Next slide, please. A healthy city is defined by 3 pillars: a physical, institutional, and social infrastructure. Communities dedicate significant time, effort, and money proactively planning their physical and institutional infrastructure, but often ignore strategic planning for social infrastructure or initiatives. We must evolve. We can no longer ignore planning for our social infrastructure. Like our physical and institutional infrastructure, we need a Made for Lethbridge strategy grounded in evidence and one that leverages all available resources. Next slide, please. Lethbridge has always had social issues, but over the past 4 years, we have experienced unprecedented converging factors that have supersized our social problems. The opioid meth crisis, mental health issues, and homelessness have significantly increased. And this is just the beginning. The ripple effects of COVID are going to significantly increase our social issues. These issues in turn have impacted our community safety and crime rates, which puts direct pressure on the police. Next slide. A solid strategy requires an in-depth needs assessment. We need to define the problems before we create solutions. We completed 18 months of data collection, stakeholder engagement, and analysis, resulting in a comprehensive 124-page needs assessment. And this work continues. We continue to collect data. Next slide, please. This is a high-level one-page summary. Lethbridge is not a town anymore. We have hit 100,000 people, are the third largest city in Alberta, and are a hub city to over 340,000 people for business, healthcare, education, entertainment, and social services, which means we will naturally attract the vulnerable population. Like many other communities our size, we are experiencing urbanization, which equals increased social problems. We have unique demographics. We have a high number of newcomers, seniors, children, and people with disabilities. Our urban Indigenous population is growing, which makes sense as the Indigenous population is the fastest growing population in Canada. This is important info as we must ensure the programs and services we deliver address the unique needs of these demographic groups. Regarding basic needs, we are a low-income community. The average household income is $35,000 less than the provincial average. We have one of the highest child poverty rates in Canada. We have a housing affordability problem. Our rent and home prices are low, but we have a large amount of very low income residents. Homelessness is growing at one of the fastest rates in Canada, and the #1 cause of homelessness is drug and substance abuse. Key health and safety information includes a domestic violence rate that is above the provincial average. Our mortality rate is 47% higher than the provincial average. We have a severe addiction and mental health issues. FASD is a significant and underdiagnosed problem. And again, all of these factors have placed immense demands on the police. Next slide, please. In addition to the needs assessment, we completed social asset mapping to determine exactly how many social assets or resources we have in Lethbridge, with the end goal of coordinating and leveraging all resources within our community to generate collective impact. The City of Lethbridge cannot own or solve these issues alone. It's a community problem that requires a community solution. Next slide, please. In addition to social asset mapping, we completed a social impact audit to analyze all funding sources at the delivery level. What we determined is we have a tremendous opportunity. We have the resources we need. We have passionate, hardworking people delivering social programs and services. The opportunity is bringing everyone to the table to coordinate our resources and efforts to generate community-wide collective impact. Next slide, please. We also learned the City of Lethbridge is a part of the problem. Within city administration, we had overlapping initiatives, multiple strategies, an array of different funding sources, all working in a fragmented fashion, creating layers of administrative bureaucracy. And we are not alone. This is a very common problem. The provincial and federal governments who fund or deliver most of the programs are equally at fault. Next slide, please. This is not a crisis. This is a huge opportunity. Again, we have the resources, people, and programs to move forward. The City of Lethbridge simply needs to take a leadership role to create a coordinated system with a common vision, clear goals and objectives, performance measures to accelerate collective impact. Next slide, please. We based our community well-being and safety strategy on 4 key concepts. Next slide, please. Concept number 1, individual well-being. What does well-being look like? It means individuals and families are addressing or solving their specific issues or problems to achieve that state of well-being. It is recovery-based, and well-being is different for everyone. For some, it may be a short-term income problem, and a rent supplement is used to help secure or maintain affordable housing. But for others, it may be a complex and long journey to recovery. Many of our homeless folks have brain damage from, for example, FASD. They have other medical issues, such as HIV, heart disease, eyesight problems, physical disabilities, mental health issues, and addiction, along with unaddressed criminal charges. Recovery for these folks requires the entire system to operate in a coordinated fashion, to leverage all required resources to ensure the individual achieves and maintains that state of well-being. And for some, that well-being state, they may go on to become a doctor. But for others, that state of well-being will require lifelong supports. Next slide, please. System coordination and integration of this magnitude does not happen on its own, especially when various levels of government are involved. We need a purposeful, system-wide planning to coordinate and integrate our resources, programs, and services. That disciplined cross-sector approach that connects the dots between the various systems to generate individual well-being. Next slide, please. If we as a community can do this, we will achieve collective impact. Collective impact requires us to come together to create a shared vision and common agenda, shared outcome design and measurement, coordinated and mutually reinforcing activities. And for collective impact to be successful, you require a facilitator, convener, and a coordinator of the movement. You need a backbone organization. Next slide, please. One organization alone cannot generate collective impact. You need the key organizations and players at the table, a collective of key decision makers from all levels of government, the business community. You are directly impacted by social issues and you need to be at the table. The police role is critical. Because social issues such as addiction, mental health, and homelessness directly impact policing, we need to partner with the police to enhance collaboration between policing and social programming to accelerate collective impact and elevate effectiveness. We need the faith community, service providers. As these key players, you are not just a voice or someone providing info. You need to be involved in the decision-making process. And this governance group needs to solidify, to generate that common vision and agenda, to use their collective wisdom to identify and action solutions to generate collective impact. And what's the city's role in all of this? The city of Lethbridge needs to take a leadership role to facilitate, coordinate, convene, to advocate for the movement, that backbone organization. Next slide, please. City Council approved the CWSS in 2019, and we employed a two-phased approach. In phase one, we applied the CWSS concepts internally to CSD controlled strategies, committees, and funding portfolios. Phase two is similar to phase one, except we apply the concepts community-wide to generate serious horsepower and collective impact to address our social issues. Next slide, please. In phase one, we applied the four concepts to internal City of Lethbridge controlled strategies and funding portfolios. Next slide, please. In phase one, we created an interim CWSS advisory committee of key stakeholders. This group provided oversight and direction and made funding allocation recommendations that were approved by City Council. And again, the city acted as the backbone organization. Next slide, please. A strong strategy requires targets and ongoing measurements. As part of our work in phase one, we established evidence-based targets and KPIs and incorporated performance management into the agreements to ensure accountability. Next slide, please. Realistically, the overall community impact from phase 1 will be minimal. True collective impact will come if we can catalyze cross-sector action across the entire community. The city alone cannot solve this problem. This is a community problem that requires a collective solution. In phase 2, we need to bring the city of Lethbridge together with all key stakeholders, including the police, the education system, all levels of government, the faith community, civil society, and the business community to generate collective impact. Next slide, please. We have asked the community for help to restructure our current system, to leverage and coordinate all resources, to construct that new community governance model with a mandate to accelerate community well-being and safety, with that common vision, clear goals and objectives, performance management and accountability, to help us champion social and tech innovation and leverage research. And over the last months, administration has presented to many key groups, including the Police Commission, the Chamber of Commerce, Downtown BRZ, Reconciliation Lethbridge, the current CWSS Advisory Committee, key Government of Alberta representatives, social service providers, including all executive directors for organizations funded through the City of Lethbridge, to faith groups, including the Lethbridge Evangelical Ministers Association. And we will continue. Additional stakeholder meetings have been scheduled, including Kainai and Piikani Nations, Economic Development Lethbridge, BUILD, Lethbridge Construction Association, and others. Janessa, if I could get you to load the options document. And so as part of that engagement, we presented on the community well-being and safety strategy, this presentation that I gave you today. And we asked them for their feedback. And the consistent and strong feedback we heard was, we support the CWSS and its implementation. But it was very clear, everybody said, we want action. Move forward as soon as possible. So regarding on how to construct that new governance model and committee structure, we presented 3 options and also asked for additional ideas and options. And the 3 options are listed on the screen today and were also part of the agenda package. From a high level, they were leverage the existing CWSS Advisory Committee, use the start from scratch model, or the City of Lethbridge creates. The consistent recommendation that we received was option 1, leverage the existing committee. So we are asking for your support to proceed to City Council for permission to move forward with the development of a community well-being and safety task force. Again, we heard loud and clear from the community. We want action, move forward now. We recognize this will be a generative process and we must be agile and evolve as we continue to learn. We will fail forward, but we will do it together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for your presentation. Members of the committee, do you have any questions? As well as members of council. And we almost have a full council meeting here, except for Councilor Cheryl. Councilor Campbell.
Sure. I just, what is going to be the size of the committee? Do you have any numbers on that? Do you have specific individuals? You're talking about businesses and social groups, church, they are faith-based organizations. Can you give me a little compilation of who's all involved?
Would you like me to address that, Mr. Dolan?
Yeah, Marty, maybe if you could speak to option 1 that garnered the most support. I just wanted to say generally in response to that question that what we have in mind is a task force that will have a number of perspectives represented around the table. And we've spoken to those perspectives today. But the broader group engaged in this, the broader collective impact approach. So let's say, for example, that one of those perspectives that Marty mentioned is the faith community. Well, behind that perspective, whoever that rep is, there would be a community of folks that could be engaged and involved and sharing their ideas and making a contribution. So it's not just about the size of the actual collective impact table or the task force. Behind each of those perspectives, there would be a broader network of folks, hopefully, that will be engaged. But I'll let Marty talk about the building of the current committee.
So the current committee was designed around making sure we have all of those key stakeholders at the table, folks that are impacted, by social issues, key system level folks who can help move forward change. So just to give you an example of our current membership profile, we have different government representatives there, such as Alberta Health Services, addiction and mental health. Folks like that are critical because we know that a key problem we have to solve is getting our addiction recovery of care system going. So we need AHS and addictions and mental health at the table. They have the ability to pull that lever. We don't. We have in our current model, we have the business community. For example, we have Cindy Voss representing the Chamber of Commerce, and we have the president of the Lethbridge Construction Association. We have community members that was kind of an open call to the community. We have other community groups such as the United Way and the Rotary Club. And why are they important? Because it helps us to be strategic how we allocate dollars and that we don't duplicate. And so if the United Way is giving away $5 million, it's great to have them at the table to say, hey, here's what we're doing, let's work together. We had other city departments there, such as EMS and fire and the police. We had other key government ministries, such as Children's Services. A lot of the FCSS funding we have to be careful not to duplicate with other ministries. We had housing and homelessness reps from the provincial government. And again, we had the federal government rep from the Reaching Home program. We also had folks from the housing industry, such as Treaty 7 Housing. We had experts from the Calgary Homeless Foundation. And of course, the Indigenous community was well represented. In fact, we even had a sub-Indigenous Blackfoot committee. We had justice and correction folks there, including, again, the police and from community corrections. We had post-secondary represented there from the University of Lethbridge, for example, because, again, they operate a community within a community and they have to address a lot of social issues. And so how do we partner and collaborate together? We had both superintendents from the school districts, Cheryl Gilmore and Ken Sampson. Now, again, they spend a tremendous amount of time, effort, and dollars preparing their students to learn, addressing mental health issues, poverty, addiction. And so again, how do we work together? And how do we generate that collective wisdom? We had service providers there, including the director of the Southern Alberta FASD network. We had a trauma-informed counselor there from Tracy Harvey. And so was it the perfect committee? No, but we had great community-wide representation, and the goal was no one person has all the answers, but together we generate collective wisdom. And so the message we heard from the community is, hey, you have a great group there, and they've done a lot of work and they understand what you're doing. Why don't you leverage them and ultimately do a review of the membership? Who's missing? Do you have the right people there? And ultimately, reach out to other groups for the people that you feel were missing. and leverage that group to help create this new governance structure and committee structure. Now, I need to be clear, the work they do, they may drastically change the committee structure, but it's the collective wisdom of that group with the support of administration to come together and say, what should it look like? Now, I see a couple key gaps already. I think downtown BRZ should have a rep there, and maybe others, maybe more Indigenous representation from our First Nation friends on the Kainai and Piikani Nations, so that we have more of a regional response. So that was kind of a long-winded answer. You shouldn't have let me answer, Craig.
If I could just
Noted.
If I could just, I mean, it's fresh in my memory, of course, is from our recent public hearing where we had members of the business community speaking very passionately about the situation and about how they want to get involved. And there's also, I mean, there's the business side of it. There's also the, again, the faith community, and they want to get involved. So my question, I wonder, getting them together, has there been a sense of willingness to compromise? Because I think that's where we have to eventually end up. Did you get that sense?
I can take a first crack at that just to yeah. So the answer is yes, absolutely.
Michael, you wanted to help out too? You're muted, Mike.
Yeah, if I may, through the chair, I think it's been overwhelmingly that everybody wants to come to the table and come up with a way forward. It's been in every meeting. The business community has been involved in a lot of the different meetings and is very supportive of making sure that we can move forward quickly and take action. And I think all groups are willing to compromise and look at it and come up with the right solutions.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell, do you have any other questions?
Just going forward, is there going to be, with this committee, will there be a terms of reference set up? And I imagine the governance model will be created as we go.
If I may, through the chair, we would be, through option one, we would be leaning on the current advisory committee to revamp the terms of reference and come up with it, not just from the city, but a collaborative approach using all the stakeholders to come up with that terms of reference so it meets the needs of all sectors.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very, very excited about moving forward in this way. So I appreciate all of the work that's gone into it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Kaufman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Fox, for the information, Mr. Dalton as well. On the governance structure, and maybe just following up on Councillor Campbell's question, what would governance look like then with this body? Currently, the way we've got it set up, this is a support group. Council is actually the governing body. We would actually be taking governance then from council. If you're wanting to be an action group, the body has to have the ability to act. So what would the governance structure look like? What would you propose for an actual governance structure in terms of decision making and action?
If Craig, do you want me to try, or do you want to?
I'll start, Mike, if that's all right, and say that as I mentioned at the outset, we're taking a very agile approach to this. So I don't think the proposal that we're going to make originally will represent what will look like a year down the road. But we have to strike a balance between empowering this task force and ensuring that where it's appropriate and in the interest of council, that council has the ability to make clear its goals and objectives and exercise some authority there as well. So for the groups that are around that table who have access to their own resources and don't need council direction to act, they'll continue to do what they would have always done. This is really about, as Marty talked about, doing that in a more collaborative, all-informed way. However, I do think that from a governance perspective, at this point, we would see the task force reporting to this SPC and through this SPC to council, and have that task force assigned a number of tasks. Now, those tasks to get started, and those will evolve, would obviously have to be approved by council, but they would include things like implementing the CWSS, implementing the affordable housing strategy, and perhaps some other some other tasks that the task force would identify for themselves. So there'll be a bit of balance between empowering the task force to act and also empowering the task force to coordinate is probably more appropriate than implement. So that's where we are at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Has there been any exploration about creating an arms organization?
That model,
I did see it as an option.
Yeah, that under the collective impact sort of rubric, if you will, there is an option for an entirely independent approach. My sense is at this point that would be something that, if it made sense for us and made sense for the city, that would be looked at down the road. But I think it's more of a building block approach to this. I think we want to take certainly the initial steps towards collective impact in a very deliberate way. But there are examples of some cities across the country who have gone that road. But it's my sense is and belief is that you need to have a certain level of maturity in your collective impact model before you would take those steps.
Okay, thank you. And just on when presenting the options to council, I note that under option 1, it says we could review membership. I'm assuming that should actually state we will review membership, just to ensure that who should be sitting there is sitting there. And then the final bullet says could happen quickly. I don't know if we want to turn that into the more optimistic or realistic will happen or should happen quickly if we go to this model. So 2 suggestions in terms of presentation, but those are just that might just be window dressing. I don't know. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor Coffin. Mr. Fox, did you want to say something? Because I see you had your hand up there.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Craig that through this collective impact process, it wouldn't be an arm's length at the beginning, but it could morph that to get going quickly. How we've heard it is that's why we aren't revamping the full structure, the whole outlook of it. Overwhelmingly, everybody wanted us to act quickly. And the 3 options, as you see them there, are how we took them out for feedback, and they will be revamped. So we will be acting quickly, and we will be reviewing the membership.
Thank you. I'm going by who put in their raise their hand first. So I'm just going to go under order here. Now, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all for the presentation, and also especially for the work that's been done in community. I think we're all in agreement that we need to try new ways to make an impact in our community, and I think many of our community is very supportive of the direction we're heading. However, every time this presentation is made in public, I do have some questions and concerns raised to me by residents and organizations in the community. So I'm hoping I can get some assistance in answering those questions. In the presentation, on mine it's page 4 and 5, so I'm guessing it's slide 8 and 10. Mr. Thompson, there's always this reference made, and I may sound like a broken record, but I need some help here. There's always reference made to this $700 million that's coming into Lethbridge. Can you provide me with a breakdown of where those dollars are coming from, and more importantly, where they're going to?
So I think it's time we update those slides to create less angst. But
I've been trying to get those corrected for 2 years now. So yes.
So the 700 million is directly from Canada Revenue Agency, and it's the funding into our community from the 3rd sector, which is defined as charitable organizations and nonprofits.
So help me here, because New West Theatre is a charity. The Lethbridge Symphony is a charity. Those are captured in that 700 million as well.
Yes,
and we do need to update those numbers because they're very misleading.
Yeah. So included in that is things like health, education. But if I may, Mr. Carlson, the New West Theatre, arts, culture, education, health, they all play a key role in achieving a state of well-being. If we don't account for those services, that is part of achieving for our community that state of well-being. And well-being looks different for everybody. And having access to recreation, arts, culture, effective healthcare is all part of that state of well-being.
No, I 100% agree of that holistic approach, but those numbers are very misleading and they cause a lot of angst in the community. So if we could update those, or if I could get a list of that, some sort of breakdown, because that is the most common question I get, that there is $700 million coming in to fight homelessness and poverty.
Yeah.
And I don't have, except for saying that I don't believe those numbers, I don't have an answer for those people.
We duly noted.
Thank you. Second question, and it follows up. It's on, I think, slide 10. Again, the thought that the slide states, and this is questions I get, and I'm going to get them again after today's presentation, that it bluntly states there is more than enough money in our community coming for all these organizations. And when I see youth groups, family, community support groups, counseling, etc., struggling, having to use volunteers, having to do fundraisers, 50-50s, online auctions. Can you explain that to them so that I stop getting these phone calls that there's more than enough money coming into our community? And so we shouldn't have to be fundraising for people to do these. These are the questions I get, and I get them every time this presentation is made. So I just need these answers.
So again, respectfully, very great questions, and I'm hearing loud and clear the message there. So I'm gonna try and answer that with a very specific example, and one of them is food security. So we know in Lethbridge, again, we have a lot of great organizations that are delivering food or food-related services to a number of clients in our community. And what it boils down to, because of that lack of coordination or even knowing that these other groups are doing it, we're experiencing duplication. And so we have a very large number of folks right now that are providing food to our homeless people. But in reality, we have the soup kitchen that provides 3 hot meals a day. But in addition to that, we have just a very large number of groups that are thinking they're seeing a gap for food services, and they're delivering, sandwiches to Galt Gardens on a continual basis. And so if you were to take that very large number of people all working in that pod of food services, and you put all those dollars together, we would soon realize that, wow, we have a lot of money there. And if we coordinate our efforts, we would be able to be more effective, more strategic. And that's what we found in our social impact audit, that in many cases, it boils down to a duplication of services. Now, each organization is doing a great job, but they're not necessarily communicating. And Chief Medezadeh commented on that at the beginning of the presentation. So it's about taking all those resources and coordinating it and being more strategic.
And thank you. I do appreciate those answers. It just, it is a bit frustrating to groups who are having to rely on a volunteer basis. They're working for poverty wages to do good work in our community. And they get shown a presentation that there's more than enough money already. So don't bother fundraising, don't bother donating. Those are the concerns I hear, and I know I sound like a broken record because I've raised them for 2 years now. that it's a bit hard for people to swallow or understand. So if we could make some changes to how we present things, or if we can actually be very clear that nope, there's more than enough money for food security in Lethbridge. Don't bother doing a fundraiser. Don't bother donating. Because that's the message that people are hearing, and it's really frustrating to them.
I would just
Michael?
add, Councillor Carlson, that's not the message that's intended to be delivered. And so we've heard that, and we will not present that again.
Thank you.
That is not the message that was intended to be received. That's on us, and we will not present that again. This is in no way suggesting that folks that are working hard in the community, folks that are fundraising, are not deserving of support at all. That's not the message, and we will fix that, and you will not see those slides again.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Dalton. Michael Fox, Mr. Fox, did you want to add to that, or did you have something else to say?
Yeah, if I can, I would just like to also clarify, as we move forward, we will get a really good idea quickly of where the resources are, how we're using them, and our path forward. So we can update how we are communicating this. And I believe with this this well-being task force, they will be able to look and drill down into where the needs or gaps are and make sure that we are looking at it. So the message has been received, and we'll make sure we do a better job of communicating.
Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Mayor Spearman?
Thank you. I was very interested in hearing the proposals and just following up on some of the questions from Councillor Campbell and Councillor Kaufman. I see while we're engaging with large umbrella groups, there were specific individuals who, and I'm thinking of the business community and the faith communities, who were passionate about wanting to be part of this organization, or I guess it's a task force at this point. But the other communities have ongoing organizations, and we may need to start out slowly and eventually get there. But when you have something like the Calgary Homeless Foundation, and I'm pleased to hear they've had input as well, but at least somebody owns it from year to year. It's not a task force that might go away. And you can involve people who have that passion and commitment, who will take ownership of it. I think my concern is there are wonderful groups in our city representing organizations, but they're umbrella groups. So wonderful groups like the Chamber, they have a broad interest in a variety of issues. But is there the people we heard about who are passionate about the specific issue, are those people going to be involved so that we can capture their energy? Those people who came to the microphone and said, yes, they wanted to be part of the solution. They weren't just against this specific proposal. So how are we going to make this real so that we engage and keep these people involved so they can be part of the solution going forward?
If I can kick off, having been down this road before, that's a really important question, and I think it's important for us to message clearly to the community and those that have expressed that interest and passion that this is not an exclusionary approach. It's always a challenge when you're trying to put a table of problem solvers together for complex problems, because the larger the table gets, you quite often get further away from action, and it becomes a bit of a talk shop. But these collective impact models, and I'll use an example out of the city of St. John, where they moved to a collective impact model as a result of some pretty entrenched generational poverty and other social challenges. There are 140 some organizations that are part of, umbrella organizations, I think is the language you used, that are part of that effort. And all of those organizations bring passion, knowledge, resources, and commitment to addressing the social challenges in the community. There's a smaller table where each of those perspectives, whether that be an Indigenous perspective, an affordable housing perspective, a mental health and addictions perspective, a private business faith group, those types of things. So there's a smaller core table that reaches back out into that broader community of interested, passionate people, keeps them engaged, keeps them involved, but allows the collective impact model to move forward. So this will not be exclusionary at all. And part of we mentioned Agile a couple times, Marty mentioned it, and I mentioned it at the beginning, is we're going to have to develop this as we grow. But inside of this model, there will be opportunity for us to develop similar groups to the housing group you mentioned in Calgary as an example. So it's I would say there's not a one roadmap to collective impact and how you do that. But I think our message to the community and all those folks who've come out and participated, I participated in a great conversation last night, a great one last week. And between the two, over 100 community members who are very passionate about these issues. Our message is we'll endeavor to find a way to be inclusive as opposed to exclusive. We just can't tell you today exactly what that looks like.
Okay, so will we get to the point, or do you think from a governance perspective, just following up on what Councillor Kaufman had said, where the city becomes the supporter rather than the owner?
Yes, and again, I'll kick off, but gentlemen, feel free to jump in. That's absolutely our intent, and we actually, and I don't think it's a particular line in the sand where that transition occurs, but right from the outset here, we need to recognize that our role as a city, the reality is, and this is one of the challenging things to communicate to those in the community with an interest in these issues, is the city does not hold a lot of levers here at the end of the day. The levers, the resources, the jurisdiction often rest outside the city 9 times out of 10. And that's not a cop-out or the city walking away from commitment to addressing these issues. That's the reality we have to accept. So inside that reality, that means that the city's real job is to convene. It's to bring those folks to the table that have the responsibility, the resources, and the commitment. It's to collaborate and be part of the solution generating process. And it's to advocate and support council in their advocacy efforts. And so really today, we don't own this anyway, right? We might think we do, or we can pretend we do. But this is a move towards a better governance model that puts the leadership in responding to these issues in the hands of a collective body that would be responsive to council, report to council. And I think a good example might be our affordable housing strategy. We can develop a strategy that says we're committed to seeing 800 new units of permanent supportive housing put in place over 4 years. The reality is the path to that is through advocacy, collaboration, and convening the bodies or groups that can actually do that work, because we can't. So it's absolutely like you described, right out of the gate here. This is about empowering the task force. Mike and Marty and Marty's team in particular, Marty used the words backbone organization. Our role, CSD's role, is to support and enable this task force to do the work that needs to be done. So it's right out of the gate, it's a move, and not it's not the city abrogating responsibility, it's recognizing what is the current reality in terms of roles and responsibilities, what's the best role the city can play, and how can we best support this task force. So I'm sorry, that's a long-winded way. Marty can come back at me now. But that's a long-winded way of saying yes, absolutely.
Good to hear.
If I can add just a few on that too, is we will be at the table. We will be listening. We will be making sure that we track what the group is doing and what we're saying we're going to do, and holding that accountable. So we will be helping guide along the way. We will be facilitating that and making sure that we keep track of those key performing indicators and making sure that we're moving in the right direction, and we can report back to council on where we're at and where we're going, and making sure that the community is leading the charge.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question that I have, and go back a little bit to the beginning with the makeup of the committee, etc. I'm just curious to know who do we have at the table? Say, for example, one that's really comes to mind from the Westminster area. So we understand that the police have a lot of calls to that area. There's a lot of concerns. and it's been that way over the past few years. And I'm just wondering, from that particular community, who do we have at the table that's going to, and that's one of many, but one that's really come to mind, who's at the table from that Westminster area?
If I can answer that one, at this point, we are trying to move forward quickly. So that current team is going to develop that task force. So I can't say who is from that area currently, but will we be addressing that area and speaking to those people? Yes. So as we move forward, this group is going to see who those stakeholders are. It's not going to be the city imposing our direction on it. So we have to be collaborative in this process.
Excellent. And my next question, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add, because I think this is a good example, and it speaks to this inclusionary versus exclusionary approach, that when this task force forms, we can see it managing a number of subordinate action plans or managing a number of subordinate tables, if you will. So I think, you know, LPS is clearly a key participant amongst the task force, but a crime prevention strategy would be one of the things that task force might be responsible for, but that would be managed by LPS with community participation at another table. So maybe it's the other table where the community actually has its say and has its input into the into crime prevention, as an example. So I think it's too early, as Mike said, to be able to forecast what that structure might look like, because the approach we're suggesting is to allow the current committee some time to flesh that out and see what it looks like. But I think our overwhelming message would be to folks that this will be inclusionary. And let's find a way to make sure all these concerns are addressed as we work through the process of determining the structure.
Excellent, thank you. And my next question is just to kind of follow up to
Blaine, before you move on, Police Chief, did you want to help answer that question, or do you want to add to that before Blaine asks his next question?
Sure. Just a quick comment I want to make in relation to how the community can get engaged and involved and help the police. One thing I can see police's role in moving on with this sort of a model is a fun thing even to do in a local area, a neighborhood in a community where we can actually meet, even if we have to, all the citizens to look at how we can actually develop a plan for that block or neighborhood, do a fun pilot, how we can actually secure residences, secure properties, and go through that for a period of time to see how those efforts are working out, to kind of bring even the community, the citizens, again, this is an action group like a task force, but this kind of feeds into the community and the citizens itself. So how we can help each other, the community can even take an active role in safety of the community and their well-being. So again, I think there are a lot of different ways to address this, but again, I'm quite excited how we can actually, through this model, we can actually reach the citizens better and get some sort of a buy-in as to how we can make this community safer.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. The next question, it kind of fits along with that, if I could, is we've talked a lot about, obviously this is all about a lot of social issues within our community. Who do we have, and is this something that's still going to be put together as far as social workers that are helping with this? Because as we went through our budget deliberations here, we found that a lot of the concerns throughout the community are obviously social concerns, and it would definitely need to have some of these individuals at the table. Is that something obviously we're pushing for? I would imagine that's kind of a rhetorical question, I'm sure, and get an answer to that. Thank you.
And if I may, through the chair, that is a gap. We do have, I believe, in the current working group, have a representative, but again, we have to explore that more fully, and that'll be explored through the group and pointing out the gaps and getting the right people at the table. So it is the community well-being has so many facets. There's so many, like it's incredible. There is the crime, which LPS was talking about, but there's cultural aspects. There's social aspects like you're talking about. There are so many different aspects and so many things that we wouldn't be even, maybe we aren't even touching on them here, but when we get that table together, they will be able to point them all out. You know, we're going to have the experts at the table to make sure we're addressing the different concerns, and hopefully that we can capture everybody and be open and listen. Since I've been here for the last 2 weeks and involved in these, I've done a lot of listening, a lot of times to lots of people. And it's amazing how many of the same questions and concerns are brought forward, where if we meet together, we'll have a greater benefit.
I think another piece to add to what Mike said is that this question points out the importance of having those ministries at the table, which Marty mentioned earlier. So we have reached out and have had conversations, for example, with the leadership at Community and Social Services. And there's significant interest in being part of this. And we're reconnecting next week. And I would add to that I think this model could be very much looked at as a pilot for the province. And that's the type of discussion we had with them. So I think just to build on what Mike said, there's lots of interest in getting the right perspectives and folks around the table and involved.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more that, you know, going through some of these, especially some of the social concerns that we've got throughout the community, having those experts at the table, especially those social workers that have a better understanding than you know, most of us, I guess, sitting around the horseshoe. And so thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilor Morrow.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. First of all, I appreciate you letting us ask questions and make comments at the same time. This is good debate, good conversations, and I'm glad I'm able to listen to what's been said. I'm going to date myself a little bit here because Councillor Carlson shared some of his frustrations, and I think we all have frustrations. And I know Councillor Parker, Councillor Kaufman, you might know where I'm coming from with some of my comments and questions. This has been going on at least since 1995 when I was elected. We've always had these issues. And the biggest frustration and the thing that I hear the most is that the ones that are at the table are usually the ones that benefit in one way or another. And we neglect to have the people that are affected have a voice. So we technically, a lot of times, are making decisions and spending money based on the organizations, individuals, groups, whoever it is, that stand to benefit. And I'm going to use one of our former councillor, Bridget Pasteur, former councillor, former MLA, and this comes to mind while I'm listening to this discussion, and that is that nobody wants to play in the same sandbox. Everybody wants to have their own little kingdom and their own little domain. And this is what I'm sensing with this whole issue of social well-being and the problems that we have in our community. So, a couple questions. Number one, first of all, who funds most of these programs? I think it's the province, and I haven't heard anybody say anything about having our MLAs involved or someone involved in this committee. And I think if they're going to be the guys that are going to be funding it, they need to be at the table first and foremost. So help me out. Am I wrong with that? Am I right? Or are they involved?
I'm gonna jump in, Councillor Morrow, and then ask Marty to help because he's the book of knowledge here. Your question though about the provincial funding and the fact that the bulk of the funding in support of responding to these social challenges does, from a government perspective, does come from the province. And so it's critical that they have representation at the table. And as I mentioned, I've engaged with, and we've engaged with a number of ministries on this, the folks that are responsible for allocating that money. And they really welcome this approach because it puts them a little, not a little closer to the coalface, but what this hopefully does is enables us all to better measure whether the money that's being allocated by whatever level of government is achieving the outcomes that it's intended to achieve. And so there is a provincial initiative underway right now that I'm not in a position to go into great detail because I don't know it in great detail, but it's seeking to achieve the same things. And it's really all about making sure that money that's allocated and spent in communities is having the intended impact. So this approach, I think, enhances that. I think this enhances our ability to do that. Before I ask Mike or Marty to jump in, I would like to comment on something else you mentioned too, which is critical, and that's having lived experience at that table. And so we recognize that, and the folks that need to avail themselves of these services also have to have a voice in letting the system that Marty spoke to know what's working and what isn't working. And so that's been built in to this thinking as well. But I'll defer to Mike and Marty if they've got anything to add from a finance perspective.
No, I think you covered that fairly well, Greg. The vast majority of the dollars come from the provincial government, and a lot of those dollars are funneled through different ministries. After many conversations at a provincial level, they recognize that they are not necessarily coordinated on their approach. For example, when the Ministry of Children's Services makes the decision to cut the age of support from 25 to 22, that's made within that ministry, but it has a direct impact on homelessness. When the Justice and Soul Department make a decision when and how they release inmates out of the prison system, without coordinating with the broader system, typically they release them right into homelessness. Permanent supportive housing. Right now, we are really struggling with getting the required health supports in the facilities. And we're working hard at a local level, but we need to take it up to the top where we can get better coordination between the ministries. So lots of work to do, but these conversations are occurring. And as Craig said, we've had many conversations with key government reps. The key difference between our current committee is a lot of the government reps are very local and operational people. And I agree with you, Mr. Moore, we need to get some of the key decision makers at that table who have the influence to pull the lever to generate change.
Okay.
Sorry,
no, go ahead.
Morrow. If I can just add to that too, if I understood part of your question too at the beginning is having everybody at the table, and collective impact through all of our presentations and stakeholder engagement so far we have stated that there will be tough conversations ahead because we're going to have all stakeholders at the table, and this is people that social issues affect, but also people that are delivering services for social services. So we have reached out to all parties, and that includes when the mustard seed came to town, and through that discussion, we reached out to a lot of the people there that felt their voices weren't being heard, and we've had conversations with them as well, making sure that we understand their issues and their points of view as well.
So I guess what I'm thinking, and I appreciate and I understand, and excuse me, I apologize for my ignorance. Obviously, I don't know what you all know, but so I'm going to use an analogy. If I want to learn to play soccer, I'm going to go to Messi or Ronaldo. I'm not going to go to the multi-billion-dollar owner. I feel, and after listening, and I could be wrong unless I'm not picking it up correctly, is that we, over all these times that I've been on council, have been going to the owner. And by the owner, I mean the agency or organization that provides the service. But we're not going to the person that really is the one that we all want to help. What I haven't quite clearly heard. So what I'm sensing and thinking is that we're building a castle before we're able to to deal with the basics of life. Or we're at the end of a marathon. We're talking like we're at the end of the marathon when we haven't even started. So where I'm going with that is, why would we not have a first kick at the go around here where we deal with the people that are affected and that want to be helped? Once we hear what they have to say and understand and clearly understand, because I sure the heck don't, and I don't think any of you guys do, because I don't think any of us have walked in their shoes or lived the life that they unfortunately live. So why wouldn't we engage with them first, understand them first, and make sure and then go to the next level, the people, the organizations that provide the services, and then even then the next level after that, the people that have the money bags. Can somebody help me understand if that is something that might happen, or am I totally out to lunch with that?
No, and I'll jump in because I've been down this road and these issues before, and you're not out to lunch at all. In fact, it's not uncommon to find sometimes services being provided that don't meet the needs of those that actually are seeking them for one reason or another. And that's not, and I don't think we'll ever be in a place where that doesn't exist. But I think your concerns are addressed in two ways, Councillor Morrow. I think at present, most service providers have a reasonable sense of those that they're seeking to support. So it's never perfect, it's never awful, it's somewhere in the middle. But there is a general sense out there of the needs that that those seeking services have, and Marty might be able to speak to some of the work that was done here in a bit. But the way this approach addresses your concern, I think what I would say is one, people with lived experience need to be part of this conversation. And we don't have to do that first and then follow it up with another conversation, because they need to be part of this conversation throughout and forever going into the future. And having people around that task force who have interacted with those agencies, who've sought those services from a government ministry or support from a city program, their voice is fundamental to this, absolutely fundamental. So that will happen. The other way that we sort of bridge that gap, if you will, in terms of effectiveness of services versus need, is by measurement. And Marty talked about measurement earlier, and this is one of the areas I know the province is keenly interested in too, is you don't just measure how many times you interact with a client, the level of services you provide, the number of clients on your caseload. If you want to understand whether needs are being met, you measure outcomes. You measure whether or not those folks are successfully addressing those barriers they need to be well. So I think those two ways, or those two things, will get at your concerns. But I'd certainly defer to Mike and Marty as well.
So, Mr. Morrow, your questions were music to my ears, because although we can constantly gain more information, in our needs assessment, we put forth a tremendous amount of effort to get into the trenches to hear from those folks directly impacted. We did workshops, we did one-on-one interviews, we did everything we could do to connect with those directly impacted by the social issue. And some of the key things that we heard was the system is unwieldy. There's all these different services, and how do we access them? And so we have very educated, learned, professional people that struggled to navigate the health and social service system. Can you only imagine if you are homeless, you have FASD, your eyesight is poor, how hard it is to navigate that system and the plethora of the thousands of services. And so one of the things we took from that was, as part of phase one, to create that new integrated, coordinated access model, where we're trying to create that one-stop center where the homeless or the those in need can come and get triaged and assessed and then navigate to the help they need, kind of that system navigation piece. So we're not perfect, but we really in phase one tried to implement a lot of what we learned and we're simply going to continue to build on that. And as part of our work in CSD, and I can speak for myself, I go onto the street, on that Friday night at 9 o'clock at night, and I walk with groups like the Sage Clan to get firsthand experience to see what's working and what's not working. And again, we've got a long way to go, but I hear you, and that is a very valuable message that we are trying to incorporate and address in our work.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Chair, just one more, if I can.
Please do. Go ahead. Yeah.
I guess I need to make this comment because I don't know, is this a public meeting? I think it is. And I just want to make sure that I make this comment and it'll lead to my question. I honestly believe that all members of council want to achieve the same goal here, and that is the well-being of this community. We all care. That's why we're here. And although at times it looks like we are so far apart, maybe we are in our strategy and in our plan and in our, in our way of getting to where we want to get to. But I think we all want to get to the same end line. And the reason I say that is because even people, every time I'm out and about, and for you that know me, I'm downtown a lot because that's where my wife used to work, and I was downtown every day. And as we all do, we all communicate with all kinds of people that walk around in our street. And I'm hearing the word community well-being said a lot. And I think community well-being means something different to everybody. We all have, I think, a different version of what community well-being would look like. And so I hope we keep that in mind, and I hope that we try and find a way where we can make that, where we try and get everybody's version. I know it's hard to do, but everybody's version of what they see as what community well-being means. And I'm saying that because I'm leading to, I totally agree with the mayor when he made the comments about, are we supporters or are we owners? I agree, and I think that's key. Also, when the mayor indicated and talked about the formation of this task force, I think back to when we had the presentations regarding the mustard seed, and there's been many others, but the most recent one was the mustard seed. And I think we all saw that no matter what side of the argument discussion you were at, we all wanted to have the same, everybody wanted to, to get to that goal, although we seemed like we were far apart. I know last night, and I'm going to address this to you, Mr. City Manager, after that meeting, which I'll speak for me, I didn't feel good about it because there was never going to be a right decision. We all want to help the people that need help the most. But after that meeting, I'm sure we all sensed a lot of, hey, we got two groups that seem to be divisive, but maybe they're not. And so I think it was Councillor Higgin that somehow got a lot of these groups, these people, the people that stood up at the microphones at that public hearing, got them together. And I think, Mr. Manager, Mr. Dalton, you were referring and you briefly mentioned to the meeting last night, which I happened to listen into for a short time period. That was a tremendous group. So my question, and I'm going to address it to the city manager, is that group, are those people, and I think that's who the mayor was also targeting, are those people and will those people who willingly came forward to say we want to help, are they involved in this? Again, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing this as a grassroots group, and they are the owners of it. And I hate to say it, when you have a grassroots group wanting ownership of something, I think the results will always be better than if the government takes the leadership role. So can I have your comment on that? And will these people who are willing and wanting to put their money where their mouth is, will they be involved? And I thought it was a great meeting last night. And by the way, if I can, before, just so you people that weren't there and didn't partake, there was the business people, the Aboriginal community, the religious group. It was amazing, and I don't know what you felt, Mr. Manager, but I thought that if that group took this over and dealt with this, we'd be successful. So if you can comment on that, thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Moore. Yeah, I had the same feeling last night. I thought it was an excellent meeting, and I would start by saying it's that group or the voices that were around that table last night. That's generally what we're trying to create here. So that is last night was a kind of a microcosm example of what collective impact is, of getting all those perspectives. There's some other people that need to be around that table, and we've talked about decision makers or representatives from government ministries as an example with the province. But no, last night was exactly the road that we're going down. And you use the language grassroots, and I think grassroots can be synonymous with collective impact. So that's exactly the type of effect we're trying to implement here. And to your comments about the mayor's comments earlier, hand in hand with that is to enable, and the city's role is really to enable that group to succeed. And we have a role to play around that table as well. But we also have a backbone secretariat role to support them in their efforts. So my short answer is yes. And again, I will say that this is inclusionary, not exclusionary. If we had 500 people across the community put their hands up, it's pretty difficult to get 500 people around the table. But what we have to do through this process is make sure that everybody who wants to has a way to contribute. And just because the city is hopefully moving down this collective impact model path, it doesn't mean that there isn't space for other groups to pop up and play a role. Our hope would be that we could really, from a city perspective, again, our role is about convening and collaborating and supporting. Hopefully we can support that broader effort. But my short answer is yes, inclusionary, not exclusionary, more voices, not less voices. And last night, for those that participated, I think was a really good example of the potential of collective impact, because I agree, if you set that group loose, I think we would be moving forward very, very quickly. And so that's what we're trying to do in a little more deliberate, measured way.
Thank you for that, Mr. City Manager. To use Mr. Thompson's line, that's music to my ears as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morrow. Councillor Higgin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to apologize to my colleagues around the horseshoe, the other councillors, is that last night when I had this meeting, I had recorded it and thought I'd recorded it. And when I went to the cloud to find the storage, because I did want to make sure that I passed it to all of my colleagues to get a better understanding of some of the collective input that we had last night. And my apologies, I went to get the recording. Frustrating as it was, I do have some notes. My apologies, because I did want to share it with you, so I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I know the Chief has to leave soon. So, Chief, thank you for being part of our meeting today. We greatly appreciate it. I know you're going to be leaving soon, but I just wanted to be noted that we appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Any other further questions? I see someone raise their hand. Let me just scroll here. Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add on, just from my own observations over the last number of years about when I was in Vancouver a couple of years ago around the consumption site and looking at the social issues that were there, and I visited the site and I talked to some of the social workers there, and I said, how do you work on this issue? And one of the comments that they made was, it is absolutely critical to include people with lived experiences to be involved with creating the environment where we get to a better place. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So I know that this committee looks like that's where you want to involve those people. And I just wanted to add my support to people with lived experiences. It's just vital to creating solutions. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Campbell. Is your hand still up there, Councillor Campbell? All down. Okay, very good. I only have one question, and thank you, Mr. Thompson, and thank you, Mr. Fox, and Mr. Dalton, and everyone else. In the resolution, we have a resolution here. It doesn't say option 3. Should it say, not option 3, rather option 1? should it have option one in the resolution as the one that we're recommending, or all three going forward to council?
Our recommendation is option one.
Mr. Sarsfield, is it referenced as option one in that resolution?
So what happens, Mr. Chair, is the committee makes a recommendation on option 1, 2, or 3, or option 4, whatever they may be. It will go to council, and they will see the recommendation of the committee. In addition, they'll see the original report, which outlined the 3 options. So, like before, they could choose to go with the recommendation of the committee, or choose a different option, or one altogether.
So if there's no other questions, so the resolution states the following: be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation as information, and further that the committee recommend to City Council to leverage the existing Community Wellbeing and Safety Strategy Advisory Committee. So I guess that would be, we should probably put that in brackets then as option 1, to construct a community governance model with an action-oriented committee with a mandate to implement the CWSS. Phase 2 to generate community-wide collective impact. Am I correct in inferring that we should put that in there?
We can do it either way, if it makes the intent clearer, then for sure.
Mr. Fox, did you want to say something first?
No, I was just agreeing with you. That makes it really clear.
Okay, perfect. Councilor Morrow?
Thanks, Councilor Parker. I'm looking at the 3 options. So I'm trying to understand, maybe I just need a little bit of clarity here. The difference, what is the difference between option 1 and option 2? Because in essence, I kind of feel like we are starting from scratch. But maybe we're not. So can someone maybe just explain to me a little bit of what the difference is between 1 and 2?
Through the chair, I can try and take a crack at it, and Marty may want to add more. But to stop the current committee and then move on to creating a new one would take more time. We have a lot of the stakeholders at the current one and that understand the community and who needs to be at the table, and it would be a good way of getting off the ground faster. So one thing we heard throughout the whole engagement is people want us to act as fast as possible. So option 1, we would be able to move the fastest on starting the process and getting it kick-started. Marty, you may want to add some more.
No, that was good. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mr. Fox. So I guess I'm looking at the bullet in option 1 that says we could review the membership to determine if any key stakeholders are missing. So I guess why I'm asking the question, after listening and hearing what I heard today at this meeting, is that we need to have different people. We need to involve different people. And so we could review. First of all, I don't even know who exactly makes up this membership. And secondly, before we move forward, are we going to ensure that we clearly have the membership that we want to move this thing forward?
Yeah, I've just add a couple of comments before letting the intelligent folks speak. And I think we need to adjust our approach a bit based on what we've heard today. But the could needs to change to a will. But in addition to that, it's not just that committee, but I think as we've discussed today, there will need to be a number of tasks assigned to that committee, and I think those tasks should be coming from council. And I think we have to work to put that list of tasks together that the current committee needs to focus on in the short term. And one of them needs to be not just to review the makeup of the committee itself or the task force itself, but also ensure that the task force finds a way to ensure that all voices, all those that want to be engaged in this, all those who have come out recently, have a path to do that. So it's not just the task force itself, but we have to talk about that. And I view it as a table in the center, and the task force is a table, but there's a broader table around that task force table. So I think both those things need to happen.
And if I may add, through our engagement, those are the options that we proposed. And so they're written for feedback. As we move forward, yes, we've heard very widely from the community that we will review the stakeholders, and we do have to almost do an open call as well to make sure we see people that want to make a difference and want to put their foot forward get recognized. So we will be reaching out to some, but it is very key that we have the right people at the table. And as the city will be at the table, we will be facilitating some of how this gets formed. And we can after today's discussion too, we can add in what Mr. Dalton just talked about.
Thanks for that. And my final question or request, if I may, I know Councillor Carlson had asked for, I think it was something to do with the 700, the money, how that was being spent. And I think Mr. Thompson said you would provide that to Councillor Carlson and the rest of council. I guess since I feel like this is a brand new, fresh start, and we're all excited and enthused. Just to keep everybody starting from the beginning, I guess, would it be possible for us to also receive the makeup of the existing membership in the committee, just so that I know who's there and who's not, and we can watch as you add or remove different stakeholders to this task force. So if I can get that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Thanks, Deputy Mayor or Mr. Chair.
Okay. So just I want to follow up on that, and I know we have to be cognizant of time because I know the police commission's coming in at 4 o'clock. Councillor Coppin made a comment, a suggestion. Instead of he was more of he was implying that we should review the committee, and I think you guys have said that you're going to do that, which I think is a wise decision. Do we need to have that in writing, or is it inferred that that's going to occur? It's not going to be it's that we will review the committee. Am I correct on that?
Correct. And that was through all the stakeholder engagement. We've heard that, and today we're hearing it again. Most of those were recorded, and we have notes on all that. So yes, we will be reviewing it.
And so the members of the committee, or even people outside of the committee on council, would you like to see the membership on the board before it comes officially to council to be voted on? Or is that something that doesn't matter for it to be passed at the council meeting? Or do you want to see who's on it before we vote on it at the council meeting? I just need feedback. Anyone? Councillor Campbell?
Well, I think it's fine when it says we will look at, review who's on the committee. So that makes it apparent that that's what we're going to be looking for. So I'm okay with it going forward as is.
But you don't need it when it comes to council to be ratified. You don't need the exact line by line of who's on that committee, do you?
I don't think I do.
Councillor Higgin?
I would most definitely want to know who's on the committee. So yes, I would like to have a list.
Councillor Morrow?
Yeah, doesn't matter. Whatever's easiest. I'm okay.
And any feedback from members on council? Councillor Croson, Councillor Campbell, or not Councillor Carlson, or Councillor Coppin, how do you feel?
Can't hurt.
Okay, Councillor Coppin?
Yeah, I think that's a good decision, good idea as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we will when it does come to council, if this resolution is passed by this committee, we just request that we have a current update of who and what organizations are on this committee. And are you okay with that, Mr. Thompson?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm just emailing Mike right now the current advisory membership profile as it sits right now.
Yeah, and we don't need it as part of this 4.1. Just when it does come to council, then with council can see it as a whole. That would be great.
Okay.
Perfect. Any other questions or comments?
I just, Mr. Chair, if I could, a procedural one.
Please do.
I think that it would be helpful for us to provide council with some more specific direction to administration to consider to move this forward. So I think there are more specific tasks that we would recommend council assign to or ask the current advisory committee to examine, including not limited to the composition, but I think we want to specifically task them to look at how they will manage broader community engagement and ensure everybody with a voice and an interest has a way to participate. I think we also want them to ask and make recommendations back to council or this committee around leadership and who will co-chair this committee. So I don't know, and Mr. Sarsfield, I'd like to see us provide council with some recommendations for council to consider to provide back to us to go to the current advisory committee to get this started off on the right foot. And I guess I'm not quite sure how we do that. Could we augment this decision of this committee perhaps in when this is addressed at council? Could administration come forward with additional recommendations for directions to the advisory committee, I guess is maybe the question I'm posing.
Ms. Sarsfield?
The committee can do a number of different things. They could just pass a recommendation, whatever it may be, but it also may be to provide additional information for one, as you mentioned, provide the current structure or composition of the committee. And second, we could provide certain recommendations in terms of, for consideration of the terms of reference, what type of committee will be, how it'll be structured, but it would just be a draft, because the idea is not to pass the terms of reference today or at council. It's just to get the committee going and get whatever composition of that committee is to provide feedback back on the terms of reference.
So do we need that in this resolution here, 4.1, or could that be later on when it comes to council? Is everyone okay with that? Then we're not wordsmithing it as we on the fly here.
So what we would do is we would understand that that's the commitment we'll make and provide it when it goes to council on April 20th.
Thank you very much. Very good. I'm going to move right along here, seeing there's no other hands up here, and I'm going to read out resolution. First of all, can I get a sponsor for 4.1? Do I have anyone from the committee who would like to sponsor 4.1?
I'll sponsor it.
Okay, so Councillor Higgin, thank you. Item 4.1, be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee receive the report and presentation as information, and further that the committee recommend to City Council to leverage the existing Community Wellbeing and Safety Strategy Advisory Committee option 1 to construct a community governance model with an action-oriented committee with a mandate to implement the CWSS Phase 2 to generate community-wide collective impact. Is there any discussion on this? I think we pretty much discussed it, quite a bit of it. Is there any opposition to this? If not, or I'll just call the vote of the 4 members. All those in favor? Opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Thanks, Mr. Fox, and thank you, Mr. Dalton, as well. It's greatly appreciated. Moving right along in our agenda, I'm just going to open up here. I got two devices going on here. In the package. There we go. Just a sec here. Have to load it up again here, just freezed on me. Okay. Item 4. Nope. Sec here. Sec here. My apologies. I know it's the London Road, but I want to make sure it's officially done right here. Package recent. Okay. Why am I not getting this coming up with my thing here? Well, I want to, we'll just do item 4.3, the criminal activity growth in London Road neighborhood. We have Ms. Kate Conley and Mr. Ian McLaughlin, London Road Neighborhood Association. I want to welcome you guys here and thank you for your patience. You've probably been waiting for a bit here, but we appreciate you coming forward and also going through the right process of coming and presenting to us. I know it's kind of a new way of doing things, but hopefully you guys find us welcoming and hopefully we can get a lot of information from you folks. So welcome. Hi, Ms. Conley. Mr. McLaughlin, just come on up to the microphone.
Thank you. And good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Sure can.
Good afternoon to the committee, to the councillors, to the mayor, to David, and to all the administration. And thank you for listening to our concerns. The background to this is that I became president of the London Road Neighbourhood Association at the AGM last June. And before that time, while I was on the board, and certainly gathering steam after that, I received a lot of concerns from neighbourhood residents about the number of crimes in the area and the increase in crime over the past few years. Because of this, I sent a letter to the new Chief of Police, and he sent back asking for some comparative figures, 1 year over another, and he sent back these the figures comparing the first 10 months of 2020 with the whole of 2019. And even with the 2 months of missing statistics, because they hadn't been able to get them organized yet. I think we will receive those later, especially with the new, I think it's called stat? No, anyway, whatever. The chief was referring to it earlier. We will no doubt get the full figures, but it raised serious concerns. And so we would like to present you now. Professor McLaughlin will present the actual stats. And I gleaned from the London Road Community Facebook page a further long list of criminal activities, reports, complaints. All of these have happened in the past 12 months. And this London Road Community Facebook group is not directly connected at all with the London Road Neighbourhood Association or our board, although some of our board, including myself, are members of it. But it has 433 members, so gives quite a good representation out of London Road total, which is estimated at 1,500 households in total. Now, this Facebook page is a wonderful resource for the community, and until this past year, I would say that at least 50% of all its posts were about helpful things like finding lost dogs and cats, asking for the best builders, landscapers, etc., and generally people who wished to borrow, say, garden equipment and didn't have it, and it was all neighbours reaching out to each other. But certainly over the last year in particular, I find that the vast majority of the postings appear to be reports of criminal activity, and you see them in the handout that was given to you. And I haven't even included everything. And of course, we know that many people do not even report crimes. I know myself, the year before, my car was broken into twice in 6 months. And one night, about 5 cars on my street, not my own, just in that one block area, had their windows smashed and items stolen. So there are really, really definite concerns about this, and I'll let Ian give you the actual hard statistics, and then we'll just highlight a couple of the comments of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Your Worship, councillors, thank you. People believe all kinds of things. People believe that Elvis just left the building. They believe in Santa Claus and they believe in the Easter Bunny. They believe that criminal activity is a growing problem. Does the data bear that out? Next, please. We went to the Lethbridge Police Service and asked them if they could provide some crime data for the London Road neighborhood. They don't have the exact area covered by the neighborhood, but they do have a significant subset of it that's marked in red on that map. It doesn't show all of London Road, but one part of it. So that data was extracted. Next, please. We had complete data for 2019. We had the first 10 months of 2020. So we increased the 2020 data by 20% to come up with an adjusted data set for 2020. The assumption is, of course, that the crime rate in November and December of 2020 was distributed as it was through the rest of the year. And that is a heroic assumption, of course. So we looked at those differences over time, and we compiled the graph on the next slide, please. Thank you. So when the red line is a whole lot longer than the blue line, you can see that there's a significant, not statistically significant, but there is a marked increase in the level of crime from 2019 to 2020. You can see the drug complaints have gone up markedly. Suspicious person or vehicle has gone up quite significantly. Theft from auto has gone up significantly. Increases in domestic related calls, assaults, theft over and under, that is 5,000, I believe. And intoxication not arrested, almost double. Mental Health Act, almost double. Petty Trespass Act, almost double. So there have been some not statistically significant, but quite marked increases in criminal activity from 2019 to 2020. So they're the cold hard facts. They seem to bear out what people are observing in the London Road neighborhood, that criminal activity has been increasing in the past year. So let's see what that really means and look at a small subset of all of the data that Kate drew out from the Facebook page. And let's just look at what crime really feels like to the people involved. Next, please. December 2020, 7th Avenue at 6th Street. Around 8:30 p.m., a man came to the front door and attempted to enter. When he was unsuccessful, he headed east along 7th Avenue and tried the other front doors in the block. This is a vignette from a professional woman who works for a large chartered bank in the neighborhood, and that was obviously most disconcerting to watch that happening. I'll hand the next one off to Kate.
I would just like to give this quote from someone who actually lives on my block and is very, very concerned and frightened. And now she is not, like me, an old lady. She is about 40. She's very fit and active and has a young family. And this is what she had to say. The influx of theft, vandalism, and general nuisance over the past 12 to 24 months has been astronomical. We actually had someone walk into our house while I was home a few months ago. I feel so unsafe and vulnerable in my own home and community, and utterly helpless at the same time. And one more really disturbing anecdote here. This happened on 7th Avenue between 10th and 11th Street on April the 10th of 2020. A disabled senior who uses a cane was unloading groceries from her car. As she took them into her house and came out again to get the rest of them, she was distracted by a man in her front porch. She didn't know what was going on. I think she waved her cane at him and he backed away. But at the same time, his friends were stealing all the rest of the grocery bags from the trunk of her car. She did call and report this to the police, and the report was filed. But I think those are just two instances of just how frightening life has become for many of our residents, particularly in the 600 block between 6th Avenue and 7th Avenue, all the way along there. So we really do feel that something needs to be done about it. Ian.
Next, please. October 3rd, 2020, person smoking crack pipe in closed front porch in the afternoon. Disturbed by visiting neighbor. Fled. 3 holes burnt in porch carpet. Reported to police. Next, please. Do you want
Oh, for me to do, certainly, yes. How about this one? On July the 1st of 2020, on 7th Avenue and 11th Street, residents reported their 4th break-in and theft in 2 months. This time, the back gate lock was forced and the garage door was broken down. Again, very concerning and potentially frightening.
September 18, 2020, locked trunk of car broken into overnight. Stolen items include Samsung tablet, laptop bag, suitcase, toiletry bag, drinks cooler. Next, please.
October the 29th, 2020, a resident of 12th Street South. A quotation, "Thefts seem more brazen than ever. Anything that isn't locked or nailed down seems to have become free for the taking. Sad to say, that's the reality lately."
September 26, 2020, daytime attempted break-in of parked cars, reported to police.
October 18th, 2020, video posted of car prowlers trying doors, reported to police, and 2 men were picked up at 2 a.m.
July 1st, 2020, Canada Day. Residents report their 4th break-in theft in just 2 months. This time the back gate lock was forced and the garage door was broken down.
I think from all of these you get a general sense of the pattern of what has been happening in London Road and perhaps in other communities as well. But it's certainly very, very concerning for many of our residents of all ages. I think particularly our frail elderly residents who live alone. Ian.
25th, 2020. 2 neighbors spotted a man going through neighbors' backyards, smashing things with a golf club. When he saw them watching him, he charged at them.
April 20th, 2020, a resident on 7th Avenue South, in response to a serious theft incident, said, "Our neighborhood has become an area of break-ins, thefts, damage to vehicles, and illegal entries."
June 7, 2020, neighbors called police to London Road Park. They recovered several stolen bikes and confiscated a machete and break-in tools.
October 22nd, 2020. Homeowners saw a man using garbage bin to climb over fence of his backyard. Man fled when homeowners saw him. October 29th, the 600 block of 12th Street. Package stolen from front door.
What does all this mean? Well, here are some quotes in conclusion. Our neighborhood has become an area of break-ins, thefts, damage to vehicles, and illegal entries. The influx of theft, vandalism, and general nuisance over the past 12 to 24 months has been astronomical. We actually had someone walk into our house while I was home a few months ago. I feel so unsafe and vulnerable in my own home and community, and utterly helpless at the same time. Thefts seem more brazen than ever. Anything that isn't locked or nailed down seems to have become free for the taking. Sad to say, that's the reality lately. That's what's happening to our neighborhood. People believe that criminal activity is increasing. We've shown that their perceptions are borne out by the data, and we have a more vivid sense of what that really means to the residents of London Road.
And apologies for some of the repetition there. You can blame COVID again, because that's what happens when 2 board members try to put together a report and they're not face-to-face, but they have to do everything via email. So apologies, but maybe it just sort of rams home the point. In conclusion, we do feel that there are some very positive potential or partial solutions to the rising crime rate in London Road neighbourhood and to the real fears expressed by many residents. First, we have a request for increased police patrols of London Road, and we feel especially beneficial would be more bike patrols because they can sort of shoot across the parks and investigate what's going on there as well. We also request that the red shirt teams extend their beat into London Road. This is most needed in the first block, as I mentioned before, the 600 block, including London Road Park, and 9th Avenue and Kinsman Park. So we would be very grateful if they could extend their patrols. And all of this, of course, ties into the first presentation that you had today. And something that probably would help more than anything else is for Lethbridge to provide greater services and housing for the homeless and the addicted population. I think if this were to happen, that there would be a very substantial decrease in some petty crime and some frightening crime that happens in our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Conley, and thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Appreciate you coming down in person as well and presenting, and it came out very good. It wasn't redundant at all, so we appreciate you being here. And I'm glad you could also see some of the presentation previous as well, which is quite timely. I do have some questions from members of the committee. Councillor Croson, or not members of the committee, but members of council as well. Councillor Croson.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parker. Great to hear from you, Kate and Ian. This certainly is important information. But looking at your one ask, of course, increased funding for homelessness, et cetera, is something council and this committee could look into. Your other two about increased police patrols and wanting to see the watch extended, have you considered or would you consider making this presentation to the police commission? Because, of course, they are the governing body over the police. They do have on their agenda a public part of their agenda where you could come and make this presentation. The next meeting would be end of April. But would you consider that? Because I think that's the group that really needs to hear this presentation.
Yes, I think I can speak for Ian and for the rest of the board and the residents of London Road. We will do anything we can to help improve the crime statistics in our neighbourhood. So thank you for that suggestion, Belinda.
Excellent. Yeah. Mr. Sarsfield is also the...
If I may, we approached the city clerk's office about the most relevant place to bring our concerns, and we were directed first to this committee. But we'd be very happy to talk to the police commission.
Well, no, because the two are overlapping. This is Community Safety SPC, but it doesn't hurt to have both groups hear your concerns. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Parker.
Thank you very much, Councillor Croson. Councillor Morrow.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. So thanks for the presentation, by the way. And I would agree with you about all the issues that are happening, not only in London Road, but everywhere else in our community. But I have a question. And I'm not big on social media, but people share their social media stuff with me on occasion. And several times on social media, there are residents that live in London Road who boast on social media that there is no crime and everything is good in the London Road area. So how do you deal with that, and why are some residents saying that there is no crime and there's no issues in the London Road area when they boast it all over social media?
I haven't seen those posts, but I must say I find that very hard to understand. All I can think of is that perhaps they live their lives shut away in a fortress basement or something like that and don't get out in the world very much, because it's very apparent from all of those entries on the London Road community page that there are a great many concerns about crime in our neighbourhood. And I think the police figures certainly back this up. So it's not a figment of a whole lot of people's imaginations. It really is happening.
Well, and that's why I asked the question, because I do believe what you're saying, and I do believe that it is not a figment of anybody's imagination. The numbers are there, the stats are there. It's not only, as I said, in London Road, but it just surprises me that some of the residents are saying that. So I just thought I'd ask just to.
Well, thank you. It surprises us as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrow. Any other members of the committee or even members of council have a question at all? I just want to make a point that I think maybe my question is to Councillor Higgin or to Councillor Croson. Obviously, you two members represent council on the police commission, so you're taking this as information as well that you could probably take back to the commission as well in that capacity as well. Am I correct on that?
Yes, speaking on behalf of myself, I absolutely, as a matter of fact, as Councillor Croson indicated earlier, it'd be a great presentation to come to the police commission. And I would say that the police commission is meeting tonight, and you could come in to do a presentation. I believe, and David, correct me if I'm wrong, we can have from the presenters come from the from the gallery this evening. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, there's a spot on the agenda for any police commission meeting where anyone's entitled to make a presentation, maximum 5 minutes on whatever they wish. They may not necessarily get a response, but they're welcome to present, and the information will be heard not just by the police commission, but also the Lethbridge Police Service Executive. So you may wish to aim for another meeting, because tonight will be long. I'm just telling you that it won't be till probably 9 o'clock is my guess. So.
Oh no. All right, but thank you for that, David, and thank you very much.
But what we could do is schedule you for a specified time for next meeting, if that works.
I think we'll go for the next meeting because I think both of us actually have other commitments this evening. It is rather last minute, but much as I love coming to council chambers and attending meetings, I think we'll, if we could be slotted in for the next one, by which time we may have some new stats to add to this as well. So thank you very much for that.
Excellent. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Conley, and thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. I have a resolution. Item 4.2. Can I get a member of the committee to sponsor this? This is
Sure.
the rising. Who's that?
Campbell.
Councillor Campbell. Rising crime in London Road neighborhood. 4.2. Be it resolved that the Community Safety Standing Policy Committee received this report and presentation as information.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Good information. We appreciate that. I'll call for the vote.
Question's been called. All those in favor? Opposed? I guess it's unanimous. Thank you very much for taking your time to come present to us today. And it's also been recorded as well, so people will be able to go back and watch this online as well. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you. Moving right along. I do believe, we're just going to scroll at the top here. Did we, Mr. Starsfield, did we forget a resolution in thanking Mr. Thompson and his team for their presentation? Because we did take the option, but we didn't have a resolution to thank. Did we miss any resolutions?
No, we typically don't thank administration. We thank outside or external presenters.
Okay. I just thought
but if you want to, we can do that. But
well, I think we said thank you numerous times throughout the presentation. So I just want to make sure we didn't forget a resolution that I might have just passed. I see we have no other resolution, just a motion to adjourn, don't we, Mr. Sarsfield?
That would be good.
First of all, I want to thank all the committee members for being present, and as well as members of council for joining us. Thank you, Janessa, for helping us behind the scenes, and of course, our administration, and as well, Mr. Sarsfield. Can I get a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Campbell that we now adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor? Opposed? I'm taking that as unanimous. Thanks, everyone. Be safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.